Okay, so I had a couple questions about shooting homes with all of the lights out to try to more easily achieve a nice white balance. And I actually used to shoot all of my houses like this. I would go into a house and make sure all of the lights were out, and shoot the house completely in the dark. And it takes a little bit longer because your shutter speeds are going to be longer, of course, sometimes almost comically so. You can take a minute maybe sometimes to get an exposure of a dark room, three exposures of a dark room. Um, so I don't do this anymore, but there are some pros and cons to this approach, which we'll get into here. And the first one being the white balance is a little bit easier. So let's apply a preset and bump up the exposure. So as we can see, we already have a pretty nice white balance. We could try to tweak it a little bit. That's a little bit warmer. We could leave it there. But yeah, we don't have these warm color casts coming from the light bulb. So if we had these on, then we would be dealing with two different light sources, of which are both different temperatures. We'd have the cool light coming in from the outside, and we'd have the warm light here. And then even if we got a pretty nice white balance with the white balance selector tool, we might still have areas of the photo that would be a little bit warmer than others. It wouldn't quite be even, and we'd have to go in maybe with the adjustment brush and manually try to even things out that way. But with only one light source, we don't have that issue. So this photo is looking pretty good, but you will notice that over here, for instance, we have pretty dark shadows despite the shadows being pushed all the way up. And that's because we only have one light source. And if an area is not in direct, in direct line with that light source, if something's blocking it, you're going to have some pretty dark shadows. And if these lights were on, they would be filling in light right here. So what you're going to need to do much more often if you have the lights off in home is use the adjustment brush. And we will bump up the flow just to around 8 or so, real low, feather all the way up, and exposure all the way up, and then just go in real fast and try to even out the exposure. Pick an area of the room. So I'm not brushing right now. See, in the middle, I would say, is our brightest area. So try to match that brightness. So try to bring all the other dark areas up to that level of brightness. So just go over real quick so you can blend things smoothly. You can adjust the size of the brush with the mouse wheel, and just try to match that bright area that you have one eye on at all times. So just real quickly, and I think that's pretty good. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty even, and we're not worried about going too bright because after we do that, now that it's even, we can back down the exposure a little bit and probably leave it right about here. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So now I'll bring you to one of the complaints I have with this technique is that with all of the lights off, it's a little bit odd. It's unusual. It's because it's very obvious. You can tell that these light bulbs are all off. That's not normal. Buyers looking at a home, they want it to be, they want to envision themselves living there. So it's better if it's a little bit more inviting, and a house with all of the lights on is more inviting. This, to me, it gives it somewhat of a vacant feel. It's just missing something. These lights, lighting the room from with more light coming in from different angles. It's just a more warmer, and not just in a color sense, but a more homey feeling, I believe. It just feels a little bit lacking in some ways, a little bit vacant to me, and unusual when you have all of the lights out. This house is, not a bad example of that feeling because this room is pretty cheery. It's got a lot of natural light and some bright colors, but generally, I don't really like that sort of vacant feel, and it's just a little bit unusual looking. It kind of stands out to me. But I'll show you the main problem I have with this approach right here with the other angle of this room. So we can see this is looking in a different direction towards the windows, and this is our neutral exposure here. We can see the room is very dark and the window is very bright. So we have a lot more dynamic range that we're trying to capture because the lights aren't helping us out a bit. The lights are a huge help. It lessens the difference between the brightness of the outside and the brightness of the inside. It really helps match those two a little bit and bring them a little bit closer. This is our darkest exposure, and this is actually just about dark enough to get the detail I need on the other side of that window. I would like it to be a little bit darker, but we have pretty good detail on the other side of that window. And now if I go to the brightest exposure, we're still not bright enough for the darkest area of the room. I mean, we're pretty close. We could probably make this bracket work with just 3 shots. I went ahead and took 5 for this angle. And so you can just see the difference here. And that's ultimately, it's just more work. It's more photos, more files that you have to work with in Lightroom and on your SD card. I'd rather shoot 3-shot brackets, and having all the lights on is going to help a lot with that. And overall, even if you do take 5-shot brackets, you're still going to have more brushing in with the adjustment brush to balance out these shadows, because there's no light hitting this side of the couch. All of your light is over here. So this is going to be a pretty extreme shadow no matter how many shots you have in your bracket, and you're going to need to work a little bit to even out the exposure in your photo. So that's all for this video. If you're interested in improving your real estate photography, speeding up your workflow, or if you're just getting started and would like a complete guide to shooting and editing, I have an online course which I think you will find a lot of value in. It also includes the Lightroom presets that I use for every house that I shoot. The link to it is in the description below, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you don't like it, there's no risk.